What's up, everybody, and welcome to Fantasy Football Today, DFS. I'm joined, as always, by McClure and Meg Shoup. We were just talking before we went live about how my Bryce Young lineups did really well. Could have done better, could have had some outrights. Hopefully, some of you had Bryce Young. I mean, listen, I tied him, Meg, to David Moore, and he had some drops. He didn't have a great game by any means. If I had done that stack with Adam Thielen, though, different ball game. Anyway, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Week 14, we got a lot of buys. This is really interesting. Makes the slate very, very interesting and nuanced. But no, I'm doing great and ready to talk for week 14 with you guys.
Grey Goose Hayes, Mike, he says, I skip the gym on Thursdays during football season just so I can catch this show live. Mike, your reaction to that?
I love it. If this were like an early edge episode, I would say, give me a set of something every time we get a by the way. But we're not doing that here. So we'll see. Maybe we'll come up with something and get a little workout in during this episode.
I am the king of by the way and for the record. I just can't get it out of my speech during this show. So if you guys want to do a counter, as in like count how many times I do that, like it's like the line on each of those is 4.5 and it's juiced heavily to the over. All right, let's talk about the Falcons +6 at the Vikings. We're going to get right into it. I do want to remind everybody, if you're watching on YouTube, the Fantasy Football Today DFS contest, it's already in the chat. Click on that. It's only $5. And obviously, if you're listening to the podcast, that's great too. It'll be in the podcast description, YouTube description as well. Falcons +6 at the Vikings, 46-point total. You know, Meg, this is a pretty high total, but I don't really have a lot of interest in this game. I totally understand if people want to go back to Bijan Robinson. I was on him last week. It paid off. Drake London is interesting, a chalky piece. And on the Vikings side, you can attack this Falcons defense. I've just so far haven't found myself getting anywhere in this game. How about you?
I do have some interest in Darnold Jefferson stacks. You could add TJ Hawkinson to that. So I do have some interest there. Herbert in the same spot let me down massively last week, but I think it's fine to go back to it with Darnold and Jefferson.
All right, Mike, what do you think on this one? Is this a spot that we should have a lot of interest in? I like TJ Hawkinson at 4,300. It's hard to say no to that. I'm a no to Drake London at 6,400. There's just other receivers I like. I'm a no to Bijan Robinson. Aaron Jones, only 6,500. Justin Jefferson, 7,800. What say you?
Yeah, I think this is one that I want to try to get some pieces in. I think it really is kind of game script dependent. Like we know you can play Darnold and Jefferson. I like that a lot. I like Drake London a little bit here on the other side. I think that we could have scenarios where this Falcons team really is trailing, 7, 10, 12 points, somewhere in that range. But having the ability to kind of throw the football over the middle of the field. Again, a dome, perfect conditions. That's the baseline for this team. That's when I want to look to attack them. So for me, I think it's going to be Drake London. You see the last game, 16 targets. It's just a target thing. It's just a volume thing. If you get 16 targets, am I happy with no touchdowns and 86 yards? No, I'm not, right? But with 16 targets, there's certainly the upside for 150 and a touchdown. And that's probably more likely, frankly, with 16 targets and 9 receptions. Like 9 receptions, 86 yards, and no touchdowns is essentially the floor if you're getting that kind of volume, right? So yeah, for me, I'm looking at Drake London here at 6,400. That kind of volume, again, whether it's repeatable or not, we'll see. I think the game script makes it that way. If you can pencil them in for even 75% of that, the price point should be 7,400, not 6,400.
I think what scares me in this one is what everybody saw last week, or what the people have seen the last few weeks with Kirk Cousins. It's like, what's going on with his shoulder, with his arm, with his plant foot? Like, I have no idea what the situation is there. But Mike, you're right. I didn't think Minnesota was impressive last week. They ended up somehow beating Arizona. But the point is, I think Minnesota could absolutely kind of rock Kirk Cousins and company. If we see anything of what we saw from Kirk Cousins last week, and to your point, that means a lot of Drake London, just a lot of the receiver core. So I totally understand the volume argument. Real quick, because I don't want to just gloss over Bijan Robinson. Are we in or out? Mike, I'll start with you and then Meg, and then we'll move on to the next game. Mike, are you in or out on Bijan Robinson?
I'm looking right now. I'm running a brand new set. So let's see. I've got a little bit. I've got around 10%. The ownership showing about 12 to 14. So just kind of right in line. When I see a situation like that, it's one that I am fine playing him. Like if you like Bijan, that ownership's not scary at all. Right. And I'm getting enough of them when the computer wants me to play it. So Yeah, I think that he is fine. I like the price point at 7,500. Again, I think that's why the ownership's where it is. It's not an obvious play in this spot. Yeah, I don't mind Bijan at all here.
All right, Meg, how about you?
Yeah, I'd agree with Mike that I'm interested. I don't think he's going to be one of my main pieces, but I definitely have interest with it, similar to London, his volume as well.
Yeah, it makes sense. In my first builds, these are hand builds that I built. I didn't have Bijan Robinson in those lineups. I did sneak Saquon Barkley into those lineups, though. And I mean, I could drop Saquon, put in Bijan, and then, have 1,500 left over to kind of do whatever I want with. So it's just a thought there. All right, let's go to Saints Giants. This is a pretty pedestrian total, 41. The Saints without Taysom Hill, that certainly hurt a lot of us who were kind of all in on Taysom Hill last week. And we've got Alvin Kamara at 8K. So no Taysom. It should mean big things for Alvin Kamara. Juwan Johnson's only 3,400. That makes a lot of sense. I'm not in on this receiver core. On the other side, I'm out on Malik Neighbors, but Tyrone Tracy at 5,800 makes a lot of sense. Pretty good matchup. Giants at home. Tyrone Tracy, a great running back in my opinion. Mike, I'll start with you. Are you in on anyone in this game?
I don't think so. On this initial run, I'm trying to find anyone. I don't think so. I think losing Taysom Hill really hurts this team, just from a real life football standpoint. I'm not really bullish on the passing game. Like, if you think you can continue to hit the deep shot, then, go play it, right? Good luck. On the Giants side, like, there's just so little to play for at this point in the season.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not getting anywhere so far right now. Things could change, but as of right now, like, I'm talking like nobody. Like, I'm scrolling, and I don't have anybody in this game.
Meg, I know that Alvin Kamara is going to be really popular. He's showing up in a lot of stuff. I think I'm actually out on Alvin Kamara. While I do think he's going to enjoy the volume, and I do think it's a good matchup, I just think there's some low-priced options and some high-priced options that I'm going to end up going to, especially at Alvin Kamara's expected ownership. But I get playing him 100%. The volume is there. So are you in on Alvin Kamara and anybody else in this game?
Similar to you, I get the point for it. Obviously, Alvin Kamara should be the main piece in this game for the Saints. However, I have, like you, like other higher price guys, whether they're chalky or not, probably a little better. So I don't know how much I'd get to him, but I do get why he is popular for a lot of people. And then I do have interest in Juwan Johnson at that cheap price tag. Similar to Mike, I don't really have any interest in the Giants side, but if looking for cheap pieces, Juwan Johnson without Taysom Hill makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be. First of all, Meg, you're the sort of the low end, the low price tight end whisperer. So
I love those cheap tight ends. Yes.
Yeah, and I think Juwan Johnson makes sense. We saw the volume there last week, and I don't think that's necessarily going to be consistent. But with no real reliable wide receiver targets and no Taysom Hill, it does seem like they're going to rely on Juwan Johnson a little bit more. Certainly has some touchdown equity, especially in this game against the Giants. I mean, I expect Derek Carr to at least have a decent game. I'll point out he's 5,100. You can do a lot with your lineups with throwing in a receiver in Juwan Johnson or just stacking him with Derek Carr with Juwan Johnson. I'm not doing that because I have other low price quarterbacks that I want to play that you're going to hear about, but certainly don't hate that play. All right. Let's move on to another game that has a pretty low total. Jags and the Titans. This one, Mike, I'll start with you. It doesn't have a ton of interest to me outside, and we know Mac Jones is starting at quarterback for Jacksonville. I do think Calvin Ridley at 5,700, and I can't believe I'm saying it, but Nick Westbrook-Akine at 4,700. Both of these guys can explode. We've seen that. And so I have interest in both of them. I think I'm more inclined to pay up for Calvin Ridley at 5,700, but this isn't a great game, right? But Jacksonville's defense is terrible. Do you like anybody on the Tennessee side or anybody in this game in general?
I like the Titans defense and I like Pollard. Just the two correlations there. 6,400 for Tony Pollard is always interesting. I'm getting a lot of them though, because I think that he's going to have the opportunity. They've let him touch the football quite a bit. And I also think that they could be ahead in this game. And I think this team has maybe learned their lesson a little bit. Again, this Titans team, while they're not a great team by any means, there were situations early in this season where if they had turned around and handed the football off or literally taken a knee, they would have 3 more wins on their record right now. And I think that they've learned from that. So if they're in a situation late, I think this is all Tony Pollard here. I like him quite a bit in this game. So it's 6,400. I get that there's other guys in that range in terms of running backs, but I like him quite a bit, and that'll be my first piece. You can continue to play Calvin Ridley if you want. You can try and play Will Levis. If you think the Jags can push back here, we mentioned it last week. Will Levis is a little bit like Jameis Winston, not the deep ball threats necessarily. I mean, he's got the deep ball, but it's not the massive upside, but he's someone who can definitely sling it around. And if he's playing one of those games where he has the turnover, that's just meaning more passing attempts for him. So I don't mind Levis here, but mostly Pollard and Titans only.
Okay, I'm going to make this statement right now because Jameis isn't on the slate, right? He's the most exciting player in the NFL right now.
He's on the slate.
Oh, he is on the slate. Sorry. I was thinking, what was it, Monday night that they played? Okay, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Jameis is the most exciting player in football right now. In every way, like any way you want to interpret that word exciting, he qualifies. Absolutely love the Jameis Winston experience. Meg, the Tony Pollard argument is excellent. 6,400 is a reasonable price, a potentially positive game script here. And the Will Levis argument, like, you're no stranger to liking Will Levis. I mean, that stack to either of those two receivers certainly makes sense. Brian Thomas on the other side, Evan Ingram on the other side. Any interest in this game?
Actually, yes. And I think Mike makes a great point about Pollard. I think he would be kind of a leveraged play off of the Levis stacks, because I think the Levis stacks will be popular just because of the price point. And even if you wanted to include Okonkwo in that stack, Levis, Ridley, I mean, the Nick Westbrook-Akine stuff is just wild to me. Just the, how many touchdowns he gets on the lack of volume. I don't think I can go there, but maybe he'll keep burning us. But if you wanted to do, I do like Levis, Ridley, Okonkwo as like a cheap stack, but I think a lot of people do. So I do think Pollard could be a fun leverage play. Maybe I'm biased. I do need some Levis Ridley in my best ball shares for the week 14 push to the playoffs. So could be a little biased there, but I do think it makes sense in this game attacking the Jaguars defense. And then on the other side, love Brian Thomas Jr. in this spot. Absolutely love Brian Thomas Jr. I think, and then I might just have some interest in like Ridley, Brian Thomas Jr., like skinny stacks like that.
That makes sense. I mean, it's funny, like Nick Westbrook-Akine and Marcus Valdez-Scantling, like the way it's going, they could have a total of 4 or 5 receptions and have like 2 or 3 touchdowns and a combined 150 yards. I'm not saying you should play that. NWI MVS, a very interesting acronym riddled DFS lineup that you can put in there if you're really daring in a tournament. All right, let's go to the Jets lost season versus the Dolphins, 45-point total. Jets are 6-point dogs. This one's in Miami. The conditions should be pretty good. Achan, 8,200. Tyreek Hill, Mike. Tyreek Hill's only 7,100. But then again, Jonnu Smith, 5,300. He's like the wide receiver one, it feels like. Jalen Waddle, 5,400. What do you like in this game? On the other side, we've got Devontae, Garrett Wilson. I'm not interested in any of them. Breece Hall, we have to monitor. I feel like this is the Miami side or nothing. What do you say, Mike?
Yeah, Miami side or nothing. I think it's a great time to potentially play Achan again. Look, he's more expensive than Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara is going to be chalky. I don't necessarily love Kamara outdoors in that particular matchup. So I think this is another spot to potentially just onslaught Miami. Run it back like we have a couple times, or at least I have, which is just Tua, Achan, and Jonnu all in the same lineup and just collect all those offensive points. This projects as a spot where, again, you see a total at 45. Wouldn't shock me if the Dolphins score 28-31 in this game. So yeah, I like the Miami side quite a bit, and I still would play Tyreek as long as he's out there. Yeah,
I think, Meg, last I checked, Tyreek's not getting much ownership, and I kind of understand why, but all the more reason to play him for his ceiling potential, and 7,100 is just such a low price. I say that to you knowing that Jonnu Smith is the most appealing person, like at 5,300. So how are you playing the Miami side, or are you even playing the Miami side?
Yeah, my guy Jonnu is up to what? Yeah, 52, 5,300. Yep. So his price is up, but he's been like the tight end one like the last 6 or 7 weeks combined, I believe. So, you certainly could go back to Jonnu. I think Jonnu's in my pool. As you said, I like to typically pay down. There are a couple pay up spots at tight end. If not, I'll likely be paying down in that Chigakonku, Jawan Johnson range. So the one point I'm keeping or monitoring is the Breece Hall injury report. And if Braylon Allen becomes the option here, if Breece Hall were to sit, I have a ton of interest in Braylon Allen because he can catch passes, just his utilization. So Braylon Allen would be the piece only if Breece Hall's out. And then probably Jono would be in my pool, but don't know how much I'll get there.
Okay. And just to be clear, if we're playing Miami Dolphins stacks or onslaughts, are we running it back with, I understand the Braylon Allen argument, Meg, but if you're playing a Tua stack, and I'll ask you the same question, Mike, are we running it back with anybody? Let's assume Breece Hall is healthy for this one. Are we running it back with anybody?
I'm not running it back.
Okay.
It would be just Miami onslaughts. And I will say, looking at some of the projected ownership here, I think Achan's going to get a little ownership, maybe 10%. Tua, I'm projecting 1. Tyreek 1. So you're talking low single digits on that stack if you want to go that way.
That's incredible. Tua to Tyreek. What
I would recommend, if you're going to play Achan, I would pair him with Tua. Just for Achan to hit the ceiling, it's got to come through passing work. He's not getting 3 goal line rushing touchdowns.
Right.
So I would bring Tua along for that ride at 1% for sure.
So in other words, would you do Tua and Achan without Tyreek, or would you put them both in a Tua lineup?
Tua and Achan without Tyreek. Like the build that I've been playing a lot that's had a lot of success was Tua, Achan, and Jono. And again, if Tyreek goes nuts, you're getting some of that exposure through a low-owned Tua. So yeah, that's the way I would build it. Yeah.
All right. Well, part of the reason guys like Tua have such low ownership is because there's so many quarterbacks that are really cheap that people want to play. We've already talked about a few of them. Well, I don't think a lot of people are talking about the next guy that is my favorite quarterback on the slate that is super low priced, shades of Bryce Young last week. Can't wait to talk about this game. It's my favorite game on the slate, but you got to wait because we've got to hear a message from our partners.
Welcome to JJ's.
I'll have wait, there's no way I can get a burger?
No chance. But you can have the NFL on CBS streams live on Paramount Plus. Oh, hang on. There's a toy.
All right, we're back on Fantasy Football Today, DFS. Meg and Mike, the Bryce Young thing, it worked last week. I had a great week, and it was because, again, he was paired with David Moore, who was like very average, but that stack allowed me to do so much. Now, I don't have the same situation here because Aiden O'Connell, aka AOC, his receiver core, like the people I want to pair him with, Brock Bowers, 6,500, Jacoby Myers, 5,600. I don't get that David Moore price tag, right? But I absolutely love AOC at 4,800. I'm 100% playing him. We got to keep an eye on the other side because Mike Evans popped up on the injury report. Could be just a rest day on Wednesday. We'll see about Thursday's practice report. It is notable, though, that he pulled up on that injury report with a hamstring, which is totally normal because he's had that all year. But also a calf was added to that. So, again, we have to be cautious with looking at these injury reports. Whether Mike Evans plays or not, and I do expect him to play, I love this Aiden O'Connell stack, a double stack, single stack with either Jacoby or Brock Bowers. So, Meg, I'm going to start with you. Do you like this as much as I do? Or perhaps are you on the other side? Because Baker Mayfield's only 6,400. Oh, I should say he is 6,400. Mike Evans, 7,200. How are you playing this one?
Yeah, I'm like you. I have a lot of interest in this game overall. I actually do like the other side a little more. Tampa has a ton to play for. It was way too close for comfort for them last week. They have a lot to play for. They can win the NFC South, obviously. And so I really do like Baker, Mike Evans. Of course, big asterisks if Mike Evans is indeed healthy, because that is something we do have to monitor closely. You could also go to Baker, Mike Evans, Cade Otton, or if Mike Evans was out, certainly Cade Otton. Very good matchup for him here against the Raiders. So I do like the other side, but I like your point on the Aiden O'Connell side, and I totally get it. And it likely will be in my pool, just not as high as some of the other quarterback stacks. Love the Aiden O'Connell, again, because it's the condensed target share where we're just targeting Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers. So that's why I love this game in general. And then you throw in Bucky Irving. Again, watch the injury report. He's currently questionable as well. So a lot to monitor here, but like you, love this game in general.
Mike, isn't this everything we want in a DFS situation? We've got a team that has an implied total that's not super low. It's around 20. I'm talking about the Raiders. We've got a very, very likely negative game script. We got options on both sides to bring it back. We got a quarterback that's coming off a 300-plus yard game and 2 touchdowns. And oh, by the way, before he got injured and Minshew was reinserted, he looked pretty good in that game too. So I don't think it's necessarily a flash in the pan. I mean, maybe 340 yards is, but this checks all the boxes. And Meg said the most important thing, the condensed target share. It's literally like Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers, and like that's kind of it. So I just love that side. Do you love this game as much as I do?
I do. Yeah. I think it's certainly going to grab some ownership, for a good reason. Right. So I'm showing Aiden O'Connell up to 17%. I can get behind that. If he gets up to 30 to 40, I might just play his pieces in Brock Bowers and Jacoby, but I like it. I think that what's interesting on this slate is the fact that we have a severe lack, in my opinion, of playable top end quarterbacks, right? So you don't get Holmes, you don't get Lamar here. You get Josh Allen at the top, but then you get Jalen Hurts, but Hurts is in that blowout game likely against the Carolina Panthers. So I like Aiden O'Connell. I think a lot of people are going to go that direction on the builds. Doesn't mean that I'm not going to play him. I certainly am. But I'm mostly going to focus on Bowers and Jacoby Myers here. Not to pivot back too much, but the reason why Tua is projecting at 1% back on that other game, Tua is the 4th most expensive quarterback now this week. We're talking about a guy that was like 14th most expensive 2 weeks ago, just a product of how slates change like that, right? So like I like Aiden O'Connell. My only concern is it's such a strong play that we could see a lot of ownership really concentrate there.
Fair enough. And let me ask you this, Mike, is the expectation that most of those lineups that are playing Aiden O'Connell, is it that they're taking one of the 2 main pieces or double stack? I would imagine it's taking one of the 2 main pieces. Does that mean double stacking it might be the way to get a little different?
I would almost definitely double stack it, and I would almost definitely game stack it. So I think that you're going to want it, but again, I think it's still going to be a popular build, but one that's going to project extremely well is going to be AOC, Myers, Bowers, and Mike Evans. Like that's going to be a very popular build. And my concern is we have Isaac Guerrero for the 49ers, just a free square at 5,400. My concern is now you've got 5 of your lineup spots that are 30+% owned in a lot of your tournaments. That is my only concern here.
Meg, you mentioned Bucky Irving. Obviously, this show has been on him for quite some time, and he's a great option against this Raiders defense, but the hip injury does concern me a little bit. How much does it concern you? Because my guess is he's going to be active, and there's going to be coach speak that's like, Bucky Irving's good to go, full allotment of snaps. But we're going to see kind of what we saw at the end of the Carolina game where he kind of came in, but then Rachaad White came in. Like, I think Bucky could have played overtime personally, but I think they just opted to go with Rachaad White. That's just my impression here. I feel like Bucky Irving's going to be really popular, but just this particular week with that hip pointer or that hip injury may not get as many carries. If he's active, are you playing him, or are you going to read into it like I just did?
It does make me nervous, and that's honestly why I like the Baker Mike Evans stack is one of my favorites. Again, if Mike Evans is okay, or the Baker Kate Otten stack, because then it's kind of like that a leverage spot, or just then it takes me. I mean, not that we know you can stack with especially Bucky Irvin has been getting targets too. So, but I think I would just then side with really the passing game.
Okay, Grey Goose Hayes has a question. Mike, I'll give this one to you. Aiden O'Connell or Tua in cash?
Aiden O'Connell. Tua is definitely not in consideration in cash this week. It would be a tournament only play for me. And again, speaking to the product of the slate, Baker Mayfield, that we're talking about in this game, is the 3rd most expensive quarterback on this slate on DraftKings. And he has not scored 20 fantasy points in 4 consecutive games. So that click may not be as popular as some may think. So I personally like building it with the, it's very expensive relative to Aiden O'Connell, but I think you could play Baker with Jacoby and Brock Bowers. And there's always a scenario that Baker just simply still outscores Aiden O'Connell.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, let's move on to the Panthers and the Eagles. Not exactly as exciting of a matchup given the 12.5-point spread. Total, though, is 46, and the implied total for the Eagles is 29. We see these sometimes with Detroit games where it's a wide spread and people are like, they just want to be off it, but they're really not paying enough attention to the implied point total. So, Mike, I'm going to start with you. These guys are really expensive. nonetheless, Saquon Barkley probably going to be pretty popular because there is some value on the slate. He's 9K. I'm out on the Eagles side outside of Saquon Barkley. What say you?
Yeah, I'm going to be out on it. I'm not even going to play Saquon, I don't think, at this point. I think that they would be extremely wise to not get him hurt in this game, just considering where everything is. I think that we could see a little more Gainwell. I think we could see some more packages with Shipley. If you watch the last game, Shipley was actually had a play early in that game. To me, I don't think they want to put anything else on film here. So I'm off of this one personally.
Yeah, Meg, this makes sense. Well, I think Carolina's getting enough of sort of a bump in the industry for people to at least want to consider some Carolina receivers. I'm off all of them, though. I think this is a really tough matchup. I think one of these guys, Jalen Coker, is going to be back for this game. I think one or two of these guys is definitely going to get some sort of like low-end volume. But I think I agree with Mike. I mean, I don't mind being out on Saquon. I'll probably play him here and there. But this is a game I'm kind of moving on from. But it's scary, right? Because it's a 30-point total almost for the Eagles. So what are you doing in this game, if anything?
Yeah, on the Panthers side, I'm out. This Eagles defense looks elite, and I'm not messing with the Panthers. On the Eagles side, they are, pretty run heavy. Jalen Hurts' volume is down because they are just so efficient. Saquon is so efficient. Saquon is, I will say, I get the concern of, watching Saquon's volume and everything, but he is chasing some records. And I've heard, truth be told, I've heard this from other content in the industry this week, kind of debating that very thing. He's chasing some records. Do the Eagles and Saquon go for that, or do they kind of, pull it back and monitor his workload? I think that is a fair question. We don't know. I don't know, but I'm just, I do think that is in consideration. And obviously he just has an elite matchup with a very positive game script. You do worry if they're up by so much as he's sitting in the fourth quarter, like he has in some other games, to Mike's point with Gainwell and Shipley getting run. So I think there's just a lot to unpack there. With all that said, I am going to play some Barkley. So it kind of, I think like a lot of people is going to have a preloaded lineup of Garendo and Barkley, but I'll just have to find ways to get different elsewhere.
Yeah, and practice reports are going to dictate whether some of these guys are as popular as they end up being. I'm kind of going back to that Bucs game as well, but we'll have to wait and see on that. But yeah, I agree with that analysis. I think Mike has me convinced to pretty much be off of this game. A little bit of Saquon for me, though. Mike, go ahead.
I should see the question in the chat. No, we're not benching Saquon. You have to definitely separate season-long fantasy from DFS. There's 0% chance you would ever bench Saquon Barkley. There is a big chance you would not pay $8,200 or whatever the price point is in DFS, though.
Yeah, good point. Zahir, when you see our faces on the Fantasy Football Today channel, just know that we're strictly talking DFS. When you see the other faces that you normally see on this channel, they may talk DFS here and there, but obviously that is a season-long conversation. And by the way, Zahir, if you're watching us on YouTube, hit the like button if you could. Subscribe to our podcast if you're interested in DFS. That's Fantasy Football Today DFS. But if you're watching us on Twitter, come over to YouTube. Ask any questions just like Zahir did, or Kirk Schroyer, or anybody in here asking questions or making comments. All right, let's move on to, this is the last of the 1 o'clock games. There's 7, 1 o'clock, 3, 4 o'clock like we had last week. Jameis Winston on the slate. Gotta love that. But he's playing at Pittsburgh. This one's going to be interesting. Pittsburgh's implied total pretty high here. It's a 43.5 point total, but Pittsburgh implied for around 25 points. Not a game, Meg, that I've really looked at in terms of wanting to play anybody. Najee Harris, it's notable, is only 6K. George Pickens up there at 6,800. The other side I think is interesting to people because of what they saw with Jerry Jeudy at 5,700. It does appear, actually, I could be wrong. My thought is Cedric Tillman's going to play, but maybe you all have information. I don't know that he actually has gotten a practice in. Elijah Moore's 4,800. Jamari Thrash got some run. David Njoku, 5,100. I don't think I'm going to hop back on any of these receivers, Meg, given that it's at Pittsburgh and that, I'm just not expecting the same output. What say you on this one?
I'm like you. I absolutely love the Jameis Winston experience. When the matchup dictates, I will have a lot of him in DFS and in the prop market and everything. Steelers defense is one that I'm not necessarily going to go to, and there are other just spots for quarterbacks this week. So don't know that I'll get to a Jameis stack, but I got it. If someone wanted to do it, I wouldn't fault them for it because look what he did against the Denver defense. So I actually have some interest in Russ and Pickens. I mean, coming off a massive game, and Russ put up, I think 280 in the snow. So I actually do have some interest in Wilson and Pickens in this game.
Okay, and I'm reading updates right now, Mike. These are from yesterday regarding Cedric Tillman. I don't think he practiced Wednesday, so we'll have to see. He's almost 2 weeks removed from his concussion, so we'll have to see if he practices Thursday. If he's out, do you go right back to Jerry Jeudy at 5,700 or Elijah Moore 4,800?
Probably not.
Okay.
I don't mind Jeudy. It does seem that they're going to continue to target him at least, which is encouraging. It's important to remember not all targets are created equally, especially in this particular matchup and with Jameis throwing them. Njoku's interesting at times as well in tournaments, but for me, this will personally be just that same. It's very similar to me to the Titans game, and that what I'm really interested in here is the running back DST correlation. It's going to be Najee Harris and the Steelers D. I would play those two together, just like I would play the Titans and Pollard together. Other than that, for me, it's just going to be Najee, Steelers D, and I'm out.
All right. Makes sense. I don't think we need to spend any more time on that one, especially when we've got 3-4 o'clock games to cover that are all actually maybe 2 out of the 3 are interesting. One is very interesting to me, and it's the next one we're going to cover. It's the Seahawks and the Cardinals, and we'll cover it right after this message from our partners. All right, we're back on Fantasy Football Today, DFS. Apex Fuzzy's asking about Njoku and Chubb. I'm not playing either of them. It doesn't sound like they're on Meg or Mike's list. There are other tight ends I want to play, frankly. I'm not really targeting Njoku at Pittsburgh. And you've heard some of the tight ends. We talked about Brock Bowers, some cheap tight ends. So I might even have some 2 tight end lineups. They will not include David Njoku. I'm definitely out on Chubb. All right, Seattle Seahawks at the Arizona Cardinals. Mike, I'm going to start with you. First of all, I'll say this. I really like Arizona to win and cover in this game. I love Arizona at home. I think Seattle is good, particularly since the bye. I think they're a little broken on offense personally. And from a DFS standpoint, maybe you disagree. I don't really want to invest in anybody on the Seattle side. Arizona, slightly different story. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a couple little spots you can invest on the Seattle side, depending on the injury report. But I love Kyler Murray, going to be one of my favorite plays this week. This is the cheapest price tag you've seen on Kyler Murray this year, maybe the cheapest of his career ever as a full-time starter, down to $6K here, just a flat $6K. Season on the line in a sense here. They win this game. It's a huge, huge deal for them. They get to do it at home in a dome and controlled environment. And he's got a natural stacking partner that I just love. And it's going to be Trey McBride. He's got 27 targets in the last 2 games. Going to continue to play him here. Yes, I will be playing 2 tight end lineups with the wide receivers named Trey McBride and Brock Bowers in the tight end and flex position. So I like both of those guys. I love the fact that Bowers is on the slate and everyone wants to play Bowers quarterback because that's going to push more ownership to Bowers than McBride. I love Trey McBride here. He's essentially a free square in this matchup, the way Seattle wants to defend. As far as bringbacks, I always have interest in important games in DK Metcalf because of the upside and big playability. He was a limited participant. He's dealing with a shoulder injury. I don't love the shoulder injury because of how physical he is and the way he tries to break tackles. I don't love dealing with that. However, I think this is a decent spot to back him. We haven't seen an explosive game from him really since the first 2 weeks of the season. But I think that with the season on the line here in the sense, just a huge matchup, I could have some interest here at what feels like a low point in his salary as well. This is definitely, he's right back to week 2 where he was 5,900 on the road at New England. I like the price point.
Meg, I think I totally agree. First of all, 2 things. I like Kyler Murray a lot. If I had a top 3, and you'll hear our cheat sheets in Mike's top 3 in just a couple of minutes, but Kyler Murray would definitely be in the top 3. Probably number 2 behind Aiden O'Connell. Maybe Baker Mayfield's in that conversation as well. I love Trey McBride, and I really love what Mike said about Trey McBride and Bowers. You get to play those 2, in air quotes, receivers in the tight end slot or in a, quote, double tight end lineup. You get Trey McBride and Brock Bowers, and they function very much like top-end receivers. So take advantage of that when you can, is my advice there. But do you like Kyler Murray as well? Will you be stacking him, and will there be a run back?
I'm out on Kyler Murray. I am a little gun shy from this game being so low scoring just a couple weeks ago. Yeah. So I don't know if it's more that or just more, I've listed probably 4 other quarterback stacks that I'm really interested in. So you got to narrow it down. And so I think I just like those other quarterback stacks and price points together more. I like the individual pieces in this game, treating Trey McBride like a wide receiver, whether
Yeah.
you're in double tight end lineups or not. I kind of like JSN, and I was never a JSN girl this basketball season. To be full disclosure, didn't even play him much in the beginning of the season, but I've kind of come on board with his volume and everything. So have a little interest in JSN and McBride individually, and then that's kind of it for me in this game.
I certainly like the Kyler Murray, Trey McBride, JSN bring back. I think if you want to get cute with it on the afternoon slate, you can add Marvin Harrison to it. I personally don't think you need to double stack Kyler Murray. In general, I don't think you need to do that too much, but I think in the afternoon slate, you could do that if you think Seattle, like the wheels fall off on the defense. But I do got to give that defense a little bit of credit. They've been pretty great since the bye. I think going into Arizona is going to be a different problem for them, though. Let's go. Speaking of problems, wow. San Francisco 49ers host the Chicago Bears. A host of problems for each of these teams. Mike, you mentioned it. Isaac Guerrero, pretty much the free square at 5,400. I mean, I would imagine Patrick Taylor will steal some carries, but it's the Isaac Guerrero show, most likely. Debo, 5,900. Juwan Jennings, a paltry 5,200. And then on the other side, got to monitor practice reports. DJ Moore, a little dinged up. He's 6,100. Caleb Williams, only 5,600. Mike, what do you like in this game?
Yeah, I mean, Guerrero is definitely the free score at 5,400. I like Juwan Jennings. He's going to be popular as well, but could certainly get to him in this particular matchup. I think the interesting side is probably still maybe some Caleb Williams stacks. Caleb's really turned it on of late. We've seen some of the upside that he has. He's still extremely cheap at 5,600, but Guerrero definitely, as you're seeing on the screen here, if you're watching on YouTube, this is definitely going to be the free square. The thing about San Francisco is no one replaces Christian McCaffrey, right? But we watched Jordan Mason fill in and absolutely crush. We've watched Guerrero step in and absolutely crush. It is a product of the system a lot. So for me, I think that this is one where he's going to have success.
Meg, any thoughts on Guerrero, but also the receiving core? I mean, Debo at 5,900 does seem like there's some value there. Juwan Jennings at 5,200, certainly value if we think Brock Purdy is any semblance of the classic of Brock Purdy. Do you like anything on either side?
Yeah, definitely think Isaac Guerrero is a free square here. Agree with Mike, and definitely he will be kind of preloaded in my lineup as he will for a lot of people. But I can see like a Brock Purdy stack kind of being a little more contrarian. I don't know. I've seen Debo and some of the other ones getting some ownership. So I don't know that I have interest in like them individually, but if you wanted to do like a Purdy stack with the receivers, I do think that could be interesting. Again, I like so many other stacks that I don't know that I'll do that. But I think Kittle could be low-owned. I think there could be some low-owned pieces in this game because Guerrero is going to garner so much ownership. And then on the other side, I really want to pay attention to DeAndre Swift injury report, because both the running backs are currently questionable. I don't think Roschon Johnson would play with coming off a concussion. So I think we need to really watch DeAndre Swift. And to Mike's point, I don't know that I'll get to a Caleb stack, but I do have some interest in potentially DJ Moore or Keenan Allen.
Yeah, and I'll say this, the Thanksgiving slate, I was kind of all in on Rome Odunze. That didn't work out. And they like clearly have no chemistry right now. So if you're going to stack Caleb Williams or take a piece from that receiver core, in my opinion, I don't see a bounce back coming this week for Rome Odunze. I think it has to be DJ Moore or Keenan Allen. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, and Keenan Allen also didn't practice yesterday as well, dealing with an ankle injury. So they've got a number of things you need to watch there for sure.
Yeah, if memory serves, he suffered that in the Thanksgiving game and then actually came back and played and really contributed. So running on adrenaline during that game, but we'll see how it ends up. Again, practice reports this time of year, looking at the weather this time of year, optimal conditions with dome games or games in Miami with no wind and good temperatures. Those are always going to be important. Well, dome game here. This is our last of the 4 o'clock. Mike, before we get to Rams Bills, you had another follow-up.
Yeah, just see the Mason may play. Yeah, there's been a lot of confusion on Mason. It was reported he was headed to the IR. The transaction obviously has not happened yet. He didn't practice yesterday. They said he's likely still heading to the IR. I don't know why they haven't made the move yet. So something to monitor and watch. But as of right now, I would say he's probably still not playing. But it is, at least interesting that they haven't made the transaction yet.
Fair enough. Yeah, keep an eye on that. Bills at the Rams. Meg, I'll start with you. This is a high total, so there's something to be said for that. The implied point total for the Bills, 27. And for the Rams, it's not bad either. It's 23. Got Josh Allen at 8K, who I assume is not getting much ownership. The receiver core is kind of a mess for the Bills. You don't really know where it's going outside of a little bit to Khalil Shakir. We'll have to monitor Dalton Kincaid's status. James Cook, 7,400. I just don't have much interest in this game. I think the pieces are probably too expensive for me, and the portfolio a little too diversified. But the other side, not so much. Do you like any Rams or Bills?
Yeah, I think you set it up perfectly with the Bills. It can be a high implied total. It can be a high real life total, but Bills are not fantasy friendly and have not really been outside of a couple Josh Allen games, a couple James Cook games. It's really not, they have not been fantasy friendly. And I'm not going to go to them here. And to Mike's point, in the nature of the slate, we really just have to dodge Josh Allen as far as like the elite quarterback. So if you think he is going to be the one that laps the field, then by all means play him. I'm going to hope that he doesn't get a passing and receiving touchdown, and just hope that he doesn't break the slate. And I'm going to play other quarterbacks because of the nature of the slate. So I'm out on the Bills. On the Rams side, I think you can look at Kyren Williams because you can attack the Bills on the ground, and even pass catching to the running back. So I'm going to go to Kyren Williams on lineups, especially that I don't do Barkley. Maybe do Kyren for an ownership discount there.
Yeah, Mike, I think I'm out on this game largely. I'm also out on Kyren just because the efficiency hasn't really been there. And Blake Corum's getting a little bit more work. I am interested a little bit in Puka Nacua because I don't think a lot of people are going to play him. He's expensive, but at 7,700, I don't think a lot of people are going to play him in this matchup. And I just think game to game, he could have that, not a Tyreek Hill type player, not a Justin Jefferson type player, but he puts up those stats game to game sometimes. So any thoughts on Puka Nacua or anybody else in this game?
I lean towards playing Puka a little bit. Depends on what the final ownership number looks like. I'm showing about 10% right now, which actually maybe feels a little high. I would kind of expect 6, 7, 8. So going to continue to monitor that, but I do like him. I like the upside. Kyren, I like. Kyren's a classic example of someone I'm probably not going to end up playing and might bet his anytime touchdown. He's not beating you without 2 touchdowns. So at that price point, just because of his lack of involvement in the passing game, the only way that he really puts up a day that just buries you if you don't play him is with multiple touchdowns. So I don't, for me, it would just be bet his anytime touchdown, which will certainly come down. Puka's fine, largely off the game, not playing any Bills.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds like Kyren for Meg and maybe a little bit of Puka for me. And we're out on this one. I'm not taking the shot on Josh Allen in this particular game. But again, we can't just ignore the implied point total. It's coming from somewhere, but Josh Allen's going to have to rush a couple in and pass a couple for him to pay off. All right, Meg, let's get to your cheat sheet, my cheat sheet. Then Mike, your top 3 at each position. Meg, start us with the stack and then go to the chalk buy, chalk fade, contrarian, and value.
Yeah, I did mention several stacks today, but Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans, provided that Mike Evans is fully good to go, is my favorite one. But of course, watch injury report there. And of course, you could add Kate Otten to that because he is a really good matchup. Chalk buy, I think it's going to be a lot of people's chalk buy, is Isaac Guerrero. We talked about it, how it's kind of a free square. Chalk fade for me in that same game is going to be Deebo Samuel. We haven't seen a ceiling Deebo Samuel game since, I believe, week 6. And I'm going to just kind of keep avoiding them, though really hasn't been good for my best ball shares. But so if he did help me there, I wouldn't be mad, but I'm going to fade him here. Contrarian play, I just talked about it. If you kind of want to replace Kyren for Saquon, I think that could be an interesting leverage point. So Kyren would be my contrarian play, and value is, I mentioned Isaiah Guerrero, but also keep an eye on the Breece Hall. If Braylon Allen were to play, I think that's excellent value as well.
All right. My cheat sheet is Aiden O'Connell to Jacoby Myers. We can swap Jacoby for Brock Bowers between the two. I guess I'd lean Jacoby, but I'm going to play them both in Aiden O'Connell lineups with hopefully my chalk buy with a Mike Evans run back, but we got to monitor that, of course. My chalk fade is going to be Bucky Irving. I think he's going to be active, but I don't think he's going to get quite as much work as we've seen the last 3 or 4 weeks because of that hip injury, which, oh, by the way, he could potentially aggravate. I don't know. So that's my chalk fade, even though I absolutely love Bucky Irving. My contrarian plays Tyreek Hill, a very high implied total for the Miami Dolphins. And one of these days, it is going to be Tyreek Hill this season. And maybe it's this week. He's only 7,100. My value play, Juwan Johnson, just very cheap. I'm just trying to get maybe 3 or 4 catches out of him, and I probably meet the value I need there. All right, Mike, top 3 at each position. We start at the quarterback. Oh, I think you might be on mute because I can't.
I am muted. We have a barking dog over here that
Chief
wanted to. Yes, Chief was a little upset that his team is not on the main slate here, but we're going to go Kyler Murray, AOC, and Sam Darnold. I like Sam Darnold a lot here. This Falcons team, I think they can get themselves into shootouts, which I think is good for the other side. So I like AOC, Kyler Murray, Sam Darnold.
All right, top 3 running backs.
Garendo, number 1, just the free square, going to play it. Number 2, Tony Pollard, and number 3, Najee Harris. As you see, I am not spending up necessarily at the running back position this week. Looking for those mid-range plays. Love Pollard and Najee Harris in addition to Garendo.
All right, very interesting there. Wide receivers.
Drake London, number 1. I love the volume, and it's going to be on the other side of my Darnold lineups. Jacoby Myers, chalky, love the spot, though. Going to be pairing him with AOC, going to be playing him in nearly every lineup. And then Juwan Jennings. I think that this is a spot where San Francisco is still going to be competitive. The run game may not be the focus as much considering the circumstances. So Drake London, Jacoby Myers, and Juwan Jennings.
And then finally, I think we could guess 2 of the 3 tight ends here. They're certainly my 2. What are the top 3 tight ends?
Yeah, give me Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, and TJ Hawkinson. I like Hawkinson with Darnold a lot. Love McBride, love Bowers. They are legit wide receivers. I will have 2 tight ends in every single lineup.
I'm glad you closed it that way because I think I am too, and I think people need to hear that, especially since these tight ends are, in fact, in my opinion, wide receivers. All right, we're going to spend 60 seconds on this. Meg, who covers? The line is 3.5 tonight on Thursday Night Football. Lions at home, given the 3.5.
I'm nervous with all the injuries to the Lions defense, but I am still going to go Lions here.
All right. I actually went the Packers. Mike, you agree. You're kind of on the Lions here too. Not as an official play, I don't think. But.
Yeah, slightly. And I made the number 4. Not really something I'm comfortable playing. Yeah, it wouldn't shock me in this division game if it ends up being, right on where the spread is. But
yeah,
I have injury concerns on both sides. Definitely on the Lions stopping the run. But there's still some injuries on the Packers side that matter too.
And Mike, if there's 1 or 2 names in Showdown that you want in your lineup, again, I know you haven't run your simulations.
I haven't run anything yet there. I would say probably Sam Laporta is going to be a huge focal point, and Tucker Kraft on the other side.
Ooh, very. Man, this is the tight end, tight end podcast right here. Fantasy Football Today, DFS. You can catch Mike and I on CBS Sports Network in, 11 minutes, talking a lot more NFL and all kinds of other stuff, but including Thursday Night Football. But we're done for the here and now. Don't forget to join our contest. It's only $5. Get in the mix. I was 4th in the contest last week. Which is pretty good. I was like almost last place the week before, so I'm not exactly showing off here. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a great show. On behalf of Meg Shoup, on behalf of Mike McClure, my name is Sia Nejad. A big thank you to Nada, sort of behind the glass here, controlling everything, every single show. So shout out to him. We'll see you next week on Fantasy Football Today, DFS.